Kia e te whānau, welcome along to another episode of No Boundaries. I'm Laura McGoldrick, and what a time it has been. Well, it's sport for New Zealand, but particularly cricket after the White Ferns' brilliant victory in the World Cup. We then had the Black Caps winning not one but two test matches. For the first time, a test series victory is theirs over in India after a second win by 113 runs in Pune after what happened in Bangalore. First time we won a test in 36 years over in India. I'm very excited to have alongside me today Mike Hesson from Dunedin and all the way from Mumbai, Simon Dool, preparing for that third test. How's it going, Dool? It must be good to be a Kiwi over there at the minute.
Yeah, it's fantastic, Laura. Morning to you, morning to Hess, or it's afternoon your time, I know. But look, it's been a fantastic last 2.5 weeks, really. Bangalore was super impressive, and then to be able to back it up in Pune was, I mean, quite unexpected, but unbelievable from a New Zealand point of view. And I think the Indian public are sort of calling for heads already, as can happen after what's been 12 years since they've had a test series loss and 18 series at home. So magic from the New Zealand point of view, and really pleased for the team. Yeah,
it is interesting because obviously they went in having not played a lot of great cricket, the Black Caps, up until this point. For a while, really, you felt like results, particularly in the test format, had started to slip a little bit, something that we talked at length about, Mike Hesson. Hess, when you look at what New Zealand were able to achieve there, do you think that India just underestimated us, or India were the side that actually weren't as prepared as they should have been to take us on?
Look, I think two different tests. I think the first test, conditions certainly had a part to play, and you look back and go, hey, that was an absolutely outstanding test match, but the fact we were able to bowl first in conditions that were not dissimilar to our own conditions, we were able to bat in some decent times, and then we were able to sort of hang in. That was a really good win, but we had the advantage from condition perspective. Now, although we won the toss in Pune, we actually beat India in the second test at their own game. Now, that is very unusual. When you've got players like Ashwin and Jadeja, obviously we didn't even mention Washington Sundar, who picked up all the wickets, but they are formidable. They've been formidable for, 10, 12 years. They are very, very hard to beat. One test series in 20 years in India. It's exceptional, really. So to beat India at their home game with a spin bowling attack that not many Indians would have sort of gone, hey, that's a really fearful attack that we're facing. They will be concerned. And to be fair, India's batting was pretty brittle in that first innings in particular in Pune. And I'm sure some questions would be asked, as I'm sure by the sound of things Dooley says they are.
Dooley, I actually read a comment from you where you spoke about India's ability to face spin as batters. Like, they struggle just like the other teams as well, in part. Mitchell Santner taking 13 for 157, simply extraordinary given, his place in the position was called into question, and actually rightly so if you look at his record up until that point. So do you think it was just that they underestimated what Mitchell could do with the ball? Was it a combination of just not backing themselves? Or what was it that made India's, like Hess said, their batting lineup so brittle in those conditions?
Yeah, I think the point Hess made around Jadeja and Ashwin in the last, and you throw in Akshar, you throw in Kuldeep Yadav, Washington Sundar in this last test match. What India have had, and the advantage that they've had, is they've had the best spin bowling attack in the world. So in these types of conditions, or the types of conditions we faced in Pune, it was simply about them being a better bowling attack in the conditions over the last 12 years. And their batters haven't necessarily outshone everyone else. They don't play spin any better than anyone else. They've just had the best bowlers to expose the opposition. And I think that's been the biggest thing for me. When I look at the Indian batters, the current batters, they don't play spin any better than anyone else in the world. It's just they've had a better bowling attack. And did they underestimate Mitchell Santner? I don't know that they underestimated him. I don't think they were overly casual. I just think he bowled beautifully. It was an incredible performance from a guy who, when you think back, after 60-odd first-class games or 60 first-class games, he had one 5-wicket haul in 60 first-class games. He had 3 for it was his best test match performance. So his position being called into question was absolutely right. Not taken away from the performance, but the position in the team was questioned, and I don't really have a problem with it. Everyone's entitled to improve. He is New Zealand's premier white ball bowler. He is one of the best white ball spinners in the world. And what he did so well in Pune was just found a similar type of style to what he did or what he does in the white ball format, and he never left it. and he's not used to bowling really long spells, but he did it incredibly well, and India just couldn't cope. Are they, there are questions being asked, and Rohit Sharma hasn't shied away from it, to be honest. He's been very open. He said the batters underperformed across the board, but against high-quality spin in the last 4, 5, 6 years at home, they haven't been at their best. They've just had the better spinners, and that's what's won them test matches.
I saw an interesting stat, actually, of the 3 test matches that were happening around the world. Only 1 wicket was taken with pace, and that was of Tim Southee. All the rest was spin. And he managed to get Rohit Sharma, of course, which it's almost like it was his bunny. I think I saw some stats on that as well. But Rohit, as a captain, he looked disappointed. His body language was very obvious at the end of that test. And there's now some suggestions that perhaps the new coach and he aren't getting on. Could that cause or be one of the reasons that it's not gelling yet with this new combination, or is it just a case of them just get it wrong on this occasion and they move on as they get ready to prepare for Australia?
Look, I think that's the obvious way that the Indian public will go, is that there's a disagreement between Gambhir and Rohit and the teams in turmoil and those sort of things. And I think that's really easy to jump to. And I don't got no facts to suggest that that's the case at all. What I would say is that, that batting group, as Dooley said, certainly underperformed. And I also think, from New Zealand's batting perspective, they stepped up. They've certainly evolved their game from a batting point of view against spin. The ability for so many of them to sweep and reverse sweep, which basically takes a good length ball out of play, which is the reason for doing it. So you're trying to create length, trying to get them to bowl either slightly shorter or fuller to go under the bat, and that gives you other scoring opportunities. If you don't sweep, you allow the opposition to bowl at you. And that's what so many New Zealand sides have gone to India before. So it is a really nice evolution of this New Zealand Test team. And it probably shows that it doesn't happen in a straight line. Like, the last 12 months have been a bit of a concern from a Test match perspective. And, lost to Bangladesh, lost 4 on the bounce. But then to be able to back up here and show the skill sets they did, from a batting point of view, put the spin bowling to one side, was incredibly impressive. And it wasn't just from 1 or 2, it was actually from that whole batting order. They might not have got big scores other than Rachin and Devon. Tom's innings was really, really important. But there are a lot of other sort of 30s, 40s, which just in a low-scoring affair were really critical. And those were scored by showing a really good awareness from a batting point of view and understanding your game plan. So, just delighted, obviously, the spinners, but for me, the batsmen stepped up as well, which is nice to see.
A lot of people would look at those results from the last 12 months up to this point and go, what's changed? Well, the big obvious change for this Test series was, of course, that Tim Southee is no longer the captain after having stepped down. Tom Latham is now in charge. I don't think he did anything different to what Tim perhaps would have done if he were to be in charge. So how much do you think that played a part in the team and going over there, or just did a lot of things go New Zealand's way? Do they just prepare better, do you think, Dooley?
I think there's probably a very fresh approach from Tom Latham. I know he's been in the senior group of that side, but if you think about the Kane Williamson, Tim Southee, it was sort of I don't want to call it the ND mafia, but it probably ran the team for quite some time. And I don't know whether Tom had a huge amount of say as a senior player. I wasn't involved in the side, and it's nothing against Tim's captaincy either, because I think he deserved the time to take over when he did. But it's probably just a very fresh point of view and a fresh, maybe some fresh ideas, a nice synergy between Gary Stead and Tom Latham, being Canterbury guys. And sometimes that little change and a little different voice can make the world of difference. Hess will know more about it from a coaching captaincy relationship point of view, but I think sometimes that can just help. I also think the tour of Sri Lanka, even though the results weren't there, and the practice conditions in Delhi prior to that, even though it rained, all of these little things probably led up to the fact that they had trained really well. They had been exposed in the conditions for 3.5 weeks prior to a little gap back home. Rachin went down to Chennai and got some training in down there. The guys were practicing incredibly hard at exactly what Hess said, that the reverse sweeps, the sweeps, looking to put the bowlers under pressure. Coming down the wicket, very few sides have really run down at Ashwin or Jadeja in the last 3, 4, 5 years coming to India. They haven't been prepared to go down the pitch. And as soon as you start doing that, the batting approach or the bowling approach changes. And that was one of the biggest things for me as well. So the captaincy side of things, I've always been a huge admirer of Tom Latham and his ability to play spin. I think he is right up there, as good, if not better, than Kane Williamson with his ability to play spin. And that showed really well in that last innings. I thought that was the crucial innings. Alongside Rachin's 100 in Bangalore, that was the most crucial innings of this test match, because if India had blown us away, it would have given them a bit more of a chance and a bit more belief. And so, so the skipper going out and getting 80-odd in that second innings was huge for me. And it was probably huge for him from a captaincy point of view as well, to know that after a few okay scores and a few low scores, he was able to do that. So, look, changes sometimes are a really good thing. And what he's done now is some pressure on to live up to it. I guess that's the only thing that he'll find, is that he's had such an amazing start. There's some pressure on to live up to that now.
Absolutely. It was one heck of a start. His innings was crucial. Rachin's, as you mentioned, Dooley and Bangalore was superb. Backed up beautifully, actually, by the former captain, Tim Southee, who used his feet down the pitch. But, Dooley also mentioned there Kane Williamson, and we are used to seeing Kane Williamson. It's kind of hard to believe that we won that series the way we did for our first ever, and he wasn't a part of it. We now know he's no longer going to be a part of the series at all. He's not going over for that third test. Is that something that we as cricket fans need to be worried about? Are we getting ready to prepare to say goodbye to Kane Williamson, do you think? There's only 3 tests after this series at home against England, which will be brilliant. And then there's not a lot of test cricket for a while thereafter, Hess.
Look, I think Kane will be very frustrated what's happened in the last few years, with his availability through injury. And it has been pretty constant. And that's why when Will Young came in, it wasn't that difficult for him, because he's been in and out of the side a lot. He's had plenty of experience, and replacing Kane is something that New Zealand's had to become very effective at, or very efficient at, over the last probably 3 to 4 years. So it's the amount of injuries that Kane's had as a batsman is, and some of them are freakish. Some of them are not just muscle strains or age or workload. They're freak accidents, and that's where the frustration, I'm sure, will be coming from Kane. But he'll be supporting from back here. He would have loved what's happening, and probably didn't want to go over and upset the group, I would have thought. And you also look at it and go, hey, I may as well try and be right for these 3 home tests. Put on a bit of a show. And the one thing we've seen from Kane is when he has come back, he's pretty much hit the ground running, and that's due to the fact he obviously knows his game inside out and he puts the work in. But there will become a time where Kane won't want to continue doing rehab, and rehab can wear you out in terms of going through a new injury, getting ready for another tour. And although Kane's still a young man, he's played a huge amount of cricket, and the time will come where he'll say, look, it's probably time for someone else. Whether that's within the next 12 to 18 months, I'm not sure, but he'll be at a time in his life where he's starting to look at different options, I'm sure.
Dooley, and just off the back of that, you've obviously got Kane, you've got the big 4, and Kohli obviously being another one, and he's in an interesting spot. We're not used to seeing low scores like we did in these last couple of tests for him, but these are 2 men who have played an awful lot of cricket for a very, very long time, and particularly Kohli. Hess and I we have a group chat. We talk when you're working on the air, when you're commentating. We don't talk all about you all the time, but we talk about Kohli and how much he loves cricket and how much he invests emotionally. And that can, like your rehabs and the like, wear you down. Do you think we are getting ready for a bit of a changing in the guard when it comes to this big 4 that we've talked so much about in Test cricket?
Yeah, I think the time will come. I don't see Kohli missing the Australian tour, the Border Gavaskar series. That's certainly going to happen. He's in that team. I don't see Kane missing the England series if he's 100% fit. I still think there's a desire to play some Test cricket. I don't know how much. And the time comes in these careers. Look, for someone like Virat Kohli, it's not about money. He doesn't need any more money. They've got generational wealth now with what he's been able to make out of cricket. For Kane Williamson, how long does the ability to play some of these franchise tournaments to actually get back and just enjoy cricket again and have some fun in and around some of the franchise tournaments. How long does that ability last with what his body has gone through? Where does he transition to post that? If he does go and play some of these franchise tournaments, does he transition into a coaching role? He's very similar to a Stephen Fleming type character, probably not as media savvy as yet, or as outspoken as yet as Stephen Fleming would be. But, there's a time for him maybe to transition into some sort of a higher role if he wants to in some of those franchises as well. He's much loved around the world wherever he goes, and that's respect as well, because of not only the quality that he's been able to play with, but the person that he is. The human being that he is, I think, has made him one of the most loved cricketers in the world in the last 10 to 15 years. So there are opportunities for him moving forward in other capacities as well. But how long does he want to play Test match cricket? I would love to see him play for another a year and a half, 2 years. But will the body allow him to do that? So I think we just have to take it series by series with Kane at the moment, and just hope like anything that he's fit and rearing to go for that England series. Because as Hes said, when he is coming back from an injury, I don't know that anyone works harder, to be honest. Because he doesn't ever want to let anyone down, let alone himself. So I know that he'll be working his backside off to make sure he is hitting thousands of balls in the nets and getting everything right. But don't think that he's going to be playing for the next 2-3 years. It may not happen.
Yeah, you're absolutely right that he will be working hard. I mean, I don't think anyone has ever forgotten those rehab videos of him after he did his knee at IPL in the build-up to the ODI World Cup. It was quite an extraordinary comeback. And speaking of comebacks, England will be hurting after their 3-0 loss to Pakistan, and they'll be wanting to bounce back, and they get to come to New Zealand, slightly friendlier conditions, I suppose, for them. So there's a lot to look forward to in that series. We still have one test to go. Can New Zealand go 3-0? And if there are any areas that we need to work on in this last test, is it perhaps, Mike Hesson, our middle order, who hasn't fired as much as we are used to, I suppose, the likes of Daryl Mitchell? Tom Blundell looks in a little bit of a spot out in the middle at the moment. What would be your take on our middle order?
Yeah, look, I thought Daryl Mitchell would have been a huge player in this series, especially without Kane being there. So, the fact he's got past 20 once in his last 7 test innings will be a little bit of a concern. I mean, his record is still exceptional, still a high-quality player, but he looks a little bit like a man in a hurry sometimes. He looks like he's got about 2 or 3 shots to play to every ball. There's a whole heap going on there. I'd just like him to just try and find a tempo where he can operate for a longer period of time, and I think that's really important for Daryl to finish this tour well, and then obviously heading into the home series. Look, Tom Blundell, has always struggled in the subcontinent, especially with a bat, and the 40 that he got in the second innings of the test in Pune was actually really important for the team and probably for Tom. I think he batted 80 balls, 43 was actually a really important innings. And hopefully he can kick on, and get us another score in Mumbai. Look, Phillips has done nicely. I mean, he keeps getting left with the tail. The tail, sometimes he can eke something out of them. Sometimes he has to, fire a few shots. But he's had a good tour from my perspective. So, yeah, those two would like to do more. Obviously heading to Mumbai, they're going to have to make a selection decision, I guess, with obviously Ajaz getting 14 wickets last time he was in Mumbai. They might only go with 2 spinners. Be interesting to see the pitch that they end up with, Dooley. I'm interested in your thoughts on that. They've had one that's bounced and seamed under covers, and then they've had a Bunsen, kind of a Bunsen. What are they going to have now? Because I think that'll dictate the team.
I don't know. I think from a team point of view, with what's coming up next for them, I think they should just have a good, fairly true, hard surface that maybe offers a little bit of pace and bounce, but no sideways movement. Just to allow their batters to get used to what they might face in Australia. I don't know that they'll go with another Turner. That would be a surprise if it was a real Turner for me. And so therefore that New Zealand selection will come into play. It sounds, you touched on it, but it's going to sound very silly. A bloke who got 10 in an innings probably is the guy that should be dropped for the Test match in Mumbai, and that's Ajaz. Because the other thing that surprised me a little bit in Pune is Tom Latham's lack of use of Rachin Ravindra. I thought he was a real bowling option in that Test match on the odd occasion when Ajaz was struggling, but he kept going back to Ajaz Patel to give him some overs, give him an opportunity, but he just does not look anywhere near as penetrative. The revs on the ball are not there, and it just hasn't really worked for him. So that's the conundrum. If they're prepared to use Rachin Ravindra, if Matt Henry is fit, then I see that being the change. I think Matt Henry in for Ajaz, stick with the three seamers, and then you've got three spin bowling options with Santner obviously bowling so well. And you've still got Glenn Phillips. So I think he's bowled really well in the series, to be fair, and he's done a terrific job. And then you've got Ajaz as that third spinner as well, if you want to. Just on the Mitchell and Blundell situation, it's obviously the conditions are completely different at times, and it's not easy. I just wonder too, and Daryl Mitchell's such a good player. I agree totally with what you said here, around. He just looks like a cat on a hot tin roof when he comes out to bat at times, and it's just a little bit fidgety. And and you've been in and around situations in IPL teams. I wonder whether the pressure of that big money last year is on him a little bit here, and the willingness or the want to get back into. There's no way he's going to go for that sort of money again, and there's talk that he might not even get picked up, and that's a real issue. In and around it, it creates a pressure in itself. And unless you've been in that situation, you don't know what pressure that creates, because that was life-changing money for him all of a sudden one year. And then he's under pressure of not being picked up at all. And I wonder whether that has a little part to play in it as well, just subconsciously. He's not that type of guy, Daryl Mitchell, but I just think, that can play a little bit of a part.
And so, Hess, when you look at this, you've spent a lot of time in India, as have you, Dooley. This Indian team won't take these losses lying down. They're going to come out firing. Will they make any changes, or are New Zealand a real chance to go 3-0 here?
Oh, look, I don't think we're a real chance to go 3-0. I think we've got a genuine opportunity to do it, but I think...
Tapering expectations, I like that. Yes, thanks very much.
Yeah, I mean, I did tapered expectations for the second test as well, and that worked well, so I'll continue doing it. But look, I don't think they'll make huge changes in the batting lineup. They played Sarfraz ahead of KL Rahul, which I think was the right thing to do. Got 150, hard to leave him out, but I think KL Rahul will play a part in Australia. With that bouncing ball, someone through the middle who can. Because you're not other than Nathan Lyon, you're basically going to face the majority at seam, and Sarfraz is probably better equipped to face spin. So that might be one change. From a bowling point of view, I think Siraj will come back in. If the pitch is what Dooley's alluded to, which I completely agree. I think they will want a good surface and somewhere for their batsmen to score hundreds and try and dominate the game that way. But hey, confidence does amazing things, and we're riding a bit of a wave from a confidence perspective. The ball does swing also in Mumbai, even if it doesn't do anything off the straight, it can swing. So both O'Rourke, Southey and Henry, maybe not a massive swing bowler, but he can get the ball to do enough. They will still create some opportunities with the newish hard ball. So very much in it. Clean sweep, not something we would have even considered a month ago, is it?
There's a few things that haven't been on my bingo card lately that have popped up quite nicely for us. Gentlemen, I want to thank you so much for your time today. Mike Hesson from Dunedin, Simon Doull from Mumbai. That test is live and exclusive on Sky Sport. That starts on Friday. We'll have all the coverage for you. Thank you so much for joining us. Another episode of No Boundaries.